All right, everybody, welcome back. On today's episode, I have the most savage entrepreneur. This woman inspires me beyond belief. From an agency owner to having her own personal brand to doing massive brand deals and literally being the queen of delivery and breaking the mold when it comes to agency. We talk about how delivery is crucial for client satisfaction and retention, how caring about outcomes is more important than fulfilling contracts, how open communication, the way that she now communicates with her team, has led to them all owning the mission and being able to build and scale their business, team culture for long-term success, about how having curiosity about tasks sets realistic expectations in outsourcing when you're hiring or trying to scale your business, how to build and foster relationships with team members to get better results for your clients, how to navigate mistakes, especially in the lens of entrepreneurship, because she owns multiple businesses and is growing and scaling them at the same time, how leadership involves understanding and adapting to different personalities, and how why is the most underutilized statement or question, and how to use it in your business, both with your clients and with your team. And especially because she owns an agency, a very successful one that guides a lot of my clients to success. We even talk about how to hire the right agency, find them, set clear expectations and communication, and how the easiest way to start delegating and be better in your business is using her daily delegation model that she used for herself to be able to scale. So this one is an absolute blast. I drove up to Calgary to be at her house to do this one in person. And so get your notebook, lock in, and get ready for a great show. Let's get into the episode. All right, everybody, welcome back. Official Backpack Princess mode. And if you're watching this on video, you're sitting next to the person whose house I've hijacked to turn into a podcast studio, because I missed in-person podcasts, but I'm so incredibly honored and excited and super grateful that this guest of mine I've come to know and come to love like so deeply, like family. And she only lives 4.5 hours north of me. And so I get to cross into the Canadian territory to come up here. But today I'm joined by somebody who I could only describe as like a multifaceted, incredible human being and entrepreneur. And I mean, has probably walked in every bucket that most of us dance in business, from being a personal brand to being an influencer, former competitive athlete, has been behind the scenes of multiple entrepreneurs' businesses and still is, has done brand deals, focuses on all the things that actually matter to building and scaling a business, delivery being one of them, and works with family. And so she is kind of on top of that, the queen of Crocs, which, you know, that might be an entirely different podcast, but being here in person, I'm like, no, genuinely the queen of Crocs. But somebody who I've also watched just as a friend transform and really have an incredible impact, and focuses on all the right things and all the right needle movers when it comes to team, when it comes to clients, and when it comes to building and scaling a business. And so I'm honored to be joined by the incredible Gabs. Gabs, welcome to the show.
Wow, what a crazy intro.
I just made all of that up.
Thank you so much. You
You're
talk
so
better
welcome.
about me than I do of myself.
Well, I'm here. I'll be your hype man all day.
No, and I love that you said multifaceted, because I think that's a label that I felt shame of for a little bit. So I'm interested to like get into that today too, because I think before it was like a thing that like wasn't good, and now it's like everyone's talking about it. It's like interesting.
Yeah. And it's actually one of the things that I love about you, because every time we're together, I learn something else. I'm like, wait, you do what? And you have this, and you have here, and you have brand deals, and you're talking about potentially doing physical products in the future. And like, you allow yourself the freedom to explore, but you also do it in a very intentional way without sacrificing what works, which I think is an incredible skill set in its own right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I'm honored. And so I do want to start though, because one of the things that I know is we've had shared clients, Kate Perkovic being one of them, Vanessa being another one. And the thing that I always hear about you is how much of a pleasure it is to work with you, and how, I don't even know the word, it's like pit bullish you are when it comes to delivery and delivering on your results and what your promise is. And so like in your vein of business, like just like me, most of your clients, most of your business all comes from referrals. And so how do you see delivery, and how important is it for you? And like, what's kind of your theory, your thesis for you and your team when it comes to actual delivering on the things that you promise?
I think the reason delivery became so important to me was because that's actually the main reason why I just about lost my business, to be honest with you. I under delivered. And so that caused me to lose a really big client. And so from that point onward, I recognized how important delivery and client experience is. Because I think everyone's so focused on bringing in new clients, bringing in the revenue, bringing in the team. And it's like at the end of the day, though, your business will not continue to succeed or feed your mouth if your
Mm-hmm.
clients are not happy. And I think also one of our core values is like just truly like giving a shit. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's something that's missing in a lot of the done for you service world is like actually caring. So I don't even think it's about like fulfilling what's on a contract or like what you promise. I think it's just genuinely caring
Yep.
that you're delivering this service and it's going to better someone's life, better someone's business. And I think that since that's something that's so important to me, even before I became an agency, it's just something that kind of transpired in through. And I just think it's so important that yes, it is important to get those referrals and to get that client retention, but also it's just like have pride in what you do and integrity in what you do. You know, if you were on the other end, I always say this, like if you were on the other end, how would you like to receive everything? How would you
Mm-hmm.
like to experience the service? And I think that's a key element that's missing in the done for you world, especially as the online service providers has surged. So I think that's a really big thing that I always say when it comes to client delivery is that like it's just about caring,
Mm-hmm.
really, at the end of the day. Like if I were to really pinpoint one thing, it's just about caring. And at the end of the day, too, you are fulfilling a promise that you made. It's no different than if you were to make a promise to a best friend or a
Mm-hmm.
parent or whatever, right? Like it's the exact same thing in my head.
Mm-hmm.
You're just getting paid for it.
Yeah.
So that's my perspective on that.
No, I absolutely love it. And I can see it since I know most of your clients,
Mhm.
right? And so, just actually for some context, and then normally this doesn't come in early, but you have a couple of businesses, but can you just kind of explain to everybody of your agency, like what you do, who
Mm.
you serve, so we can kind of set some context before I unpack anymore?
Oh, this is the hardest part. No, just kidding. We are a done for you service. We focus more on the back end of your business. So that falls into three different buckets, whether that's social media, whether that's um, admin and operations, or if that is like video editing, graphic design. So there's a few different buckets that go within the agency. So we serve clients on that end. So we work with various amount of solopreneurs or teams. My biggest thing was being able to just help as much as possible when it comes to running an online business.
Mm-hmm.
And there was just so many different things that people needed. And so I wanted to make an agency that did all of that so that you could hire less contractors. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why we have so many different pockets in the back end of our business. So that's the easiest way to explain is like we do back end business management, but that falls into so many different subcategories. So we are a team of incredibly 8 people, and we get to serve so many different industries, so many different people, and we just get to learn so much through all the different industries and people that we get to help.
Yeah, I love that. And to something you said earlier about delivery too, is you said it's not just what's delivering in the contract, right? It's really caring and being in relationship. And so one of the things that I know since knowing you is that you kind of break the mold
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to like doing business, because there's people listening to this of like, oh, it's not on the contract, I'm not going to do it, or that's outside of my scope, so
Mm-hmm.
go find it somewhere else. But you kind of take the opposite
Gets me
philosophy.
in trouble sometimes, though.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
So in that, number one, I'd love to ask you is where has that actually gotten you in trouble, and like what kind of pain has it caused, but what clarity did you find from that?
It's gotten me in trouble because, like, if you think of the financial side,
Yeah.
it definitely has gotten me in trouble in that side because it's like, we can do it. I absolutely want to do it. At the same time, though, I have a team that I have to pay for.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just that is like because we over deliver, the lines get blurry as to like what's actually within this contract. And oftentimes like it doesn't get me into that much hot water, and like our clients are very understanding of like, yeah, like I totally understand, like, it is outside of like what you guys do on the day to day. But yeah, it's definitely gotten me in trouble in that sense that like when it comes to trying to upgrade a client's package or to say like, hey, like this is the boundary, it's like, well, the boundary wasn't very clear because in the past we have said yes to things as a one-off or a 2 times off or a
Mm.
3 times off, right? So that's where it's a con for sure. um what have I learned in it though? It's definitely helped the clients understand our values a lot more as to like, no matter what the contract says, we are here for you. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's very important when you are outsourcing to whether it's one person or a whole agency, is that as the client, you need to feel like they have your back, especially if they're like a third party, like they're not an in-house team member. Clients are going to feel like, I don't know if they're really going to be there through all the ups and the downs. So I think in us being able to kind of have those blurry lines, it's really allowed us to like jump in with 2 feet whenever you need us to.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's pros and cons, but the pros definitely outweigh the cons, in my opinion.
So then in that vein of like, what I heard you say is that like one of the reasons they got blurry is because of a lack of communication and just saying yes all the time
Mm-hmm.
now.
Mm-hmm.
So would you say that like one of the core components now is like you and your team are very, very communicative and like very open about like we'll readjust this, but like what do you focus on now to make sure that you can be flexible
Yeah.
in those outcomes, but
Yeah.
also be honoring of you and
Mm-hmm.
your team and your capacity?
Open communication is definitely big, like what you just said, like lack of communication. So just like over communicating with their clients now is a big one. So really outlining like the what is like our usual that we will take care of versus like this could be something that's going to be like a VIP project is what we called it. So just really like setting that base right off the bat with new clients, but even like current clients who have been with us for like 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
it's like we're having to have new conversations that they're not used to. So I think it's just explaining the why, I think, is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
I think people are afraid to explain the why because it like can cause like a little bit of a conversation or a discussion. So I think just explain the why to the clients, and almost giving it to them, and like they're like if it was them,
Mm-hmm.
like if it were you, and if we did this, like this is what it would be like for your business. And so that's definitely helped them like understand a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the past I've been afraid to have that conversation because I didn't want clients to be like, oh well, then I don't want to work with you guys anymore, or like whatever, right? So I think now that I'm aware that it has definitely been something that is something that can hurt myself, the agency, and my team. Because at the end of the day, I need to take care of my team. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like I don't want them to feel any sort of way when those lines are blurry. And so, yeah, I think I just have a lot more awareness of how to communicate to clients that like, hey, we're definitely all in with you, but there are some things that we just have to talk about if it's going to be a little bit out of that scope.
Yeah, and I the reason I asked too is I think it's important too, whether you like have a team or you're a coach, a
Mm-hmm.
consultant, even you have a course too, it's really easy to fall into the trap of rigidity, but also there is this, for lack of better terms, gray area
Yeah.
where sometimes the needs of our clients or the things that they're asking for is really an invitation for us to look at how we adjust what we do and create opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So now with you, because you have a team of 8, right?
Yeah.
How do you now measure and weigh like staying in the lane of like your superpowers
Yeah.
and then adjusting or bringing in as needed? Like, do you have a process of that? Is it something that's like core value driven? But like, how do you balance that now? Because like, I know what you do
Mm-hmm.
and you kind of do what it feels like on my side is everything
Yeah.
for everybody. And I'm
Yeah.
like, hey, here's a 7-figure entrepreneur. You have a problem? We'll solve it. Right.
Yeah.
It's like an
Yeah.
MC Hammer song. But how do you now balance that also keeping yourself and your team in their superpowers so that you
Mm-hmm.
can deliver on that result?
I'd say it definitely comes down to like our core values.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's me checking in on the team as well. Like that's a new thing that I know that sounds bad, but it's a new thing that I'm doing a little bit better. I think naturally we're all like, jumping in to take care of whatever it might be, whether that is within the scope of the work or whatever. But I think something that I've learned is just like checking in if like it's actually something that is doable and supportive for the team as well
Yep.
before we say yes. There was an instance where we jumped in right away because there was a bit of a crisis going on social media, and I failed to ask my team like, are you comfortable handling this? Are you okay to handle this? And so I think that has been a really big difference in being able to make sure that yes, we're like, client first, but also like team first at the same
Mm-hmm.
time. So I think that's a big thing that we've shifted is just making sure that it's both supportive, not just for the client, but it's also supportive for the team emotionally, physically, mentally, like I think that's a big thing that I didn't think about before. I was just like, no, like we need to serve the client because like they could leave us, right? Like at the end of
Mm-hmm.
the day, I always say the client is, the reason why we have the business as well. But at the same time, the team is too. So I think that's been a big difference as well as like considering your team in the decisions you make, not just the client
Mm-hmm.
and not just the money,
Yep.
and I think a lot of people make decisions on just the client or just the money and forget like what about your team? Like
Yeah.
is your team going to be okay with that too? And there's to an extent there is like where their input is factored in. But I don't even think that's a decision of like, their input. It's like just truly like how they are like as a human.
Yep.
Are they okay?
Yep.
And so I think that's been a big one. I don't know if that answers the question, but
It does, and I'll tie it together because for everybody listening and watching, like I know Gabs personally, and Gabs is a core part of your team is also family,
mm-hmm.
right? And you guys actually, I'm in your home, and
Yeah.
you live and operate out of this home like most of your core team. But I think it is really really important because one of the things I help almost actually every single one of my private clients, including our mutual client Kate, is coming up with the values, the core values of what we actually stand for and believe in that everybody's bought into, but knowing that without a team, we don't have the ability to serve a client. And if teams feel disrespected or unheard or sacrificed in the process, the only result that comes from that anyways is either resentment or losing those clients and that revenue anyways. And so when you think about that, and actually this is, I've never asked anybody this, but like when you talk about your core values, right? I think that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs, especially coming from corporate, throw up on the wall, or their words in like a document, right? Or there's these things of like, oh yeah, we had this meeting at the beginning of the year and these are our core values, right? How did you go about your team, like identifying your core values, but how do you ensure that you keep them at the forefront of like, number one, how you operate, but number two, like how all of you operate inside of the business?
I love that because I actually haven't spoken about that often. But actually, at the end of every week, I have the team answer an end of week form that goes just to me. And one of the questions is, what core value did you embody this week and why? And then I also have one that says, what core value would you like to improve on going into the next week? So not only did we mention at the beginning of the year, every quarterly meeting, but we also do it literally on a daily, of just like really reminding us, like, what did we actually embody this week and what do we want to improve on? And so I think by literally making it part of a weekly thing has really allowed them to really have those ingrained in their head when they show up every day. And I think every day now we all show up in like what core value do we want to embody today based on whatever comes up in client work. And I think it's so amazing to see how much those core values even come up in like casual conversation with the team. It's so cool. It's so cool to see. And so I love that it didn't become just a PDF or just a document that's out there. It's truly something that the team now uses as a decision guideline almost, like every time they're not sure if they should do this or that, or if that was the right decision, they think about our core values and they're able to tie it there. And so I think that's a really good part on myself and the team together that we've done, is like really making sure that it wasn't just something that was just said. It's something that we actually like embody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I have so many follow-ups for this one, but the first one I want to ask too, have you seen and noticed since making the core values a part of the week, a like tangible, measurable impact when it comes to clients, or had them reverbed back to you at all? Like, have you gotten client feedback or anything, or heard anything when it
Oh
comes?
yeah, you hear them say it. And it's so it's nothing is more fulfilling than hearing the client say it back to us without them even knowing what our core values are. Like that is so, there's no feeling, there's no word to really express that feeling, to know that like the team where everyone's doing their things, and like I'm not even in all the conversations, but I'll hear recordings or I'll hear, the team kind of just say like, yeah, so and so said this, or I'll have a client message me say this and that. It's like to see those actual word for word things that are literally our core values, and like they have no idea that they are, is like just showing how much we collectively are doing such a great job of making sure that we're not just known for the services that we do, but we're also known for the people that we are and like what we stand for as a company. And to me, that's my success. Like for some people, revenue might be a success, but for me, it's like being known for a certain way or person or way of, doing things or making someone feel is so much more rewarding to me than anything else could be.
Yeah, I love that. And you said something earlier too when you were talking about team, and
Yeah.
it kind of happened in passing, but I think it's really, really important because you said any of us as a team will jump in and help kind of solve
Yeah.
the problem, right? And I think for a lot of people listening to this, whether you have a team of 1 or a team of 10, one of the big challenges that I see with a lot of my private clients is they end up having a team
Yeah.
of task managers, and they get really, really siloed in like protecting the task instead of like protecting the outcome. And
Yeah.
there's not like this shared unity
Mm-hmm.
in what you do. And so for what you do, and for how many people you do it, you have a pretty lean team for
Yeah.
like what you deliver. And so have you noticed a difference between like, just like for say your brother who does video editing, right? I'm sure he also jumps in the bucket and helps with here and changes perspective here, right?
Yeah.
How does that help you guys as a team, but also deliver to your clients to be able to support everybody? Like, do you intentionally focus on the outcomes and protecting the outcome, and not so much like that's my job or that's my job? Like, how do you go about that in the day to day?
Definitely outcome is important, but I think because from day one of anyone starting with the agency, I've emphasized how much it's an us thing is like huge, and like how being there for one another like has its domino effect into impacting the client deliverables or the outcome. And so I think because the team is all on the same page with that, it's a very much a thing that even if that's not their department, they're like, if I can learn how to copy and paste something, or if I can YouTube this, I will go do it. Right. Like, it's never been about like, this is my department, I'm going to stay over here. It's about, no, like, we are an agency together. We are a company together. We're a team together. And if we can help with the right skill, because obviously there's skill sets to it too, but if we have the time to help, and if it's needed, like, let's go, and I think that's a big thing that comes from the onboarding of anyone coming into the company. And I think that's why I'm very picky about who joins the team as well, because it's not a traditional team. I understand that. I recognize that, but that's what makes us different.
Yeah.
And so I think that, I think we don't really focus on the title we have at the agency. It's more just like, how do we help one another? Because we know helping one another will help our clients, which will help the company, which is how we all win, And I think because everyone has that mindset, it has allowed us all to just be truly collaborative. Because I think that's something that's different about our team, is like, we are so collaborative. Again, some people will have different opinions on that, but like, it's truly what makes us so unique, not just, like I said, to clients, but also just in the work environment. And I think that's really what excites everyone coming to work, is that they know they're not just here to show up and do their job. They're here fulfilling a much bigger responsibility for various people, various companies. And that it's just, it's amazing thing. And honestly, like, everyone's feedback, even just this week, we had something happen. Everyone was like, it's amazing how, yes, I may have caused this problem, but everyone was there for me. And by that, we were all there for the client and making sure that they were okay. And that's just something you can't get when you're by yourself, or when you're in a company where you are just focused on tasks and responsibilities. It's like, it's a much bigger picture, in my opinion, that I don't think everyone leans into, but I'm glad that we do.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm over here like gloating. Number one is like a friend, and knowing your coach and coaching your coach and being in, like, I just got to give you kudos for a minute. Like, you are a walking embodiment of everything that you
Thank
say.
you.
And like, I'm in your home and I've gotten to meet your family and your team. But like, genuinely, even when you said like, my measure of success is not the revenue, it's really the relationships, right? The number one being with our team, but number two being with like the results and the way that we focus to be integrous with our word and focus on that. But you guys like embody so many things that I coach people with and I've struggled with myself. And it's really beautiful to see, because I also am next to you and I'm like, oh, there's a group thread with the whole team. They're on group FaceTime right now. They're doing family dinner meals. Like, there's this level of like deep connection that you have with your team. And it feels like you guys all operate as like one unit.
We're a family.
Yeah, 100% a family. And so now, and I'm going to ask this question just to kind of think how you see how you think about it, because I know people that have teams that are family that aren't a family in the business and are barely a family out of the business. But it feels like your whole team, whether blood or not, is like truly a family. What do you think are like the tenets or the principles or the way in which you see it that fosters that environment? Like, what are the things that you focus on that allow people to feel like that and operate as a team? Because I think there's a lot of people, myself included, who could learn from this, because I've gone through every failed iteration of like hiring team and like being transactional, or somebody makes a mistake and I make them bad and wrong, and not like, oh, the team made the mistake, we fix it. It's like blame game. So like, how do you focus on like fostering that and creating such a close-knit team when it comes to operating in client work?
Well, one, I think it comes from leading that way, right? I think when I decided I was going to become an agency, I did not realize how much time and effort I had to put into myself of becoming a good leader. I think that's one thing that not a lot of people are ready for. They're like, yeah, I want to be a team. But then they're like, oh, like, I personally have so much development to do, because communication is so different. And understanding the different kind of personalities everyone is, the different kind of way that they like to hear feedback. Like, I've had to learn so much of that. So while we are the team we are today, it took us a minute to get to be the team that we are today. But I think some of the key things that we've done from day one was, everyone does a personality test. Everyone does a few other tests. I can't even remember what they are, but I do certain things to get to know the person as a human. And I think that's a big one that people don't factor in when they're hiring, which sounds so weird to say out loud, but it's true. Like, people are just so focused on the skill sets that someone has, the experience that someone has, who they worked with, and the results that they can achieve. But it's like, how about you get to know them on a human level too? Because at the end of the day, we work Monday through Friday, typically 9 to 5, even if we're all online, and they're spending a lot of their life working for you. So get to know them on that level. So I think that's one thing that I think has changed things, is like, people the team, I should say, has really appreciated that I treat them that way versus just someone that works at my agency. So I think that's number one. Number two, I have an open door policy. Like, in our one-on-ones, we talk about both personal and professional. And I think that's like something you're going to hear me say over and over again, is like always not just focusing on the professional side of it, but also the personal side. Same with that end of week check-in I was talking about. I ask, what is your personal win and your professional win? And so I love that, like, I know people's pets' names. I know their kids' names. I know when their kids' soccer games are, like, like I love that. And I think that's a really big key piece, is like, again, just knowing everyone outside of it. And I think that's why we've become such a close-knit team, even whether we're blood or not. And I think that that's why we're all so, like, it's a no-brainer for us to go in and help that person, is because even in our happy hours, we share deep things, and that's really like our moment to just be present in that moment and just share and talk about whatever. And certain happy hours we've had, like I said, has really like unpacked a lot of like crazy things for us, like on a human level. And I think everyone getting to know each other on that human level, not just me getting to know them, but like everyone on the team, has helped everyone just really like have that emotional connection to just care more. Like, it all comes down to just caring at the end of the day. And so I think that has been a big one. And then I think the last one is just like pouring into them as well. So whether that is, again, personal or professional, I find ways to pour back into them, because again, every single day I recognize this agency would not be what it is without them. So it's a two-way street. It's a relationship. It goes two ways. It's not just one. So those are some of the things that I think has made it become the AHA family, is what we call it, be a family, and have the team culture that we have. And I will say that it all stemmed from me working in corporate and not getting that. And I said, I know that whenever I have my own business or my own team, whenever that is, I want it to be everything that I didn't have, but I wish I had. And I learned in school, like, people leave people, not jobs.
Yep.
And so that stuck with me since I graduated, however long that was. But I think because of all that, yeah, that's kind of why team culture is so important to me. Like, people are like, why do you do happy hours? Why do you, like, do all these things? And it's like, because it's like, your team culture is absolutely everything. Like, it is so valuable. And I think people underestimate that so much, because they're so focused on like just the client deliverable side and like the revenue and stuff. And like, I think that's why, and you've told me this before, I think that's what will be like the long game for me, versus the short game in my business.
Yeah. It's so, I'm like over here, like, I'm like a proud dad. I don't know if I'm old enough to like be your dad, but I just like fall more in love with you every time that you speak. And like, even getting to meet like your brother and your team, like, it's so beautiful, because like, if I painted on a picture of like how to build a team and a culture and a successful business, like, you guys would be the poster children of it. And even like leveraging your experience and acknowledging, like, any of us can be a leader, right? Like, I feel humbled every day because I feel like I'm decent, but there's so much more room to grow.
Yeah.
And I feel like one of the mistakes I made for years is thinking that leadership was like hard skills, but
Oh,
it's
yeah.
really soft skills. And I also noticed something too, like, I know a lot of incredible entrepreneurs that listen to this that get stuck in that trap of like, I'm hiring a team, but they don't know how to release it to the team or give agency to the team or like empower the team. And I was here this week as we drove up to do this podcast, and you guys had like a big moment happen.
Yeah.
Like, one that I watched put most entrepreneurs in like complete meltdown mode. But the one thing that I noticed from the inside out is there was no fault, there was no blame, there was no shame. It was just, hey, mistake was made. We're all going to own it, and we're going to work together to solve this.
Yeah.
So how do you navigate, as somebody who's an entrepreneur who started this agency while serving? How do you go about like delegating outcomes and empowering your team without necessarily controlling it or driving it? Like, what's important for you in that bucket? And like, how do you get people to feel empowered in their role, empowered in their job, and getting them excited about doing that?
I think number one, when it comes to like letting go, I think that's kind of the thing you were saying, is like, how do you let go?
Yeah.
Letting go
way more concise question.
took a long time.
Yeah.
Took a really long time, but I recognized that if I didn't let go, here's what would happen. I also recognize that I now hire people that are better than me at what I do. The agency also stemmed that, like you said, multifaceted. I like to do all the different things. And so all the services that we do today are things that I've done. So because I've hired based on that, I've hired people that are, like I said, better than me at doing it. And so I fully trust that they're going to do it better than me in whatever way that they want to, and whatever is more supportive for them. So obviously in time, we've had to do some training on like, this is the way that we want to do it, like to kind of keep it streamlined and everything like that. But I think allowing the team opportunity to figure it out how they want to do it, because at the end of the day, that's theirs.
Yeah.
Right. And it's teachable for
Mhm.
sure. But I think allowing team members to kind of figure out what is their flow and how do they want to do it. And then just giving feedback on like, okay, here's why it might not work or why it does work. And like really acknowledging that too. But I think also I've had to be open that everyone has different approaches to doing things and it's not right or wrong. It's like, let's explore that. And sometimes it's an expensive lesson. Sometimes it's a client, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's definitely the dark side of it, but I'm a strong believer that everything happens for a reason and that it'll either teach us something or, we did it. Right.
Yep.
So, I think allowing the team to kind of figure out a little bit of the process that they want rather than like forcing something down their throat that like, this is how we do it. I'll share how I did it, but they might see something that I didn't see because I've been in it for so many years. So I think that's number one in allowing me to let go and also just trust. And at the end of the day, you're hiring someone. You must trust them.
Yep.
So trust them
Yep.
and let them do it, right? Like no one likes to be micromanaged and no one likes to be just told. And I think today, everyone has a lot of great ideas, a lot of inspiration. And sometimes team members feel like they can't express that because they're not the CEO. And so I've always made it very apparent, like if you have something to say, if you have something to share, like share it. And so I think that's really important as well, is like to be open to different ways of doing things, even if you're used to doing it one way for as long as you've been doing it. Because the way that someone learns or operates is very different than how you learn and operate. And I think, again, going back to humans, we're all different and that's okay. And so again, like just giving feedback where feedback is needed, obviously, if it's like not being done exactly how it, quote unquote should be or whatever, but I just think there's so much room for that. And like I said, the why is like a big one. I think whenever I have feedback to give the team, explaining the why makes it a lot easier for them to understand like why it didn't work or why it did work. So they know where to like lean more into or maybe to back off more. So not saying that it's like always like a perfect thing. It's definitely like a lot of like back and forth, but at least allowing it to be different avenues, I think, is what makes it really successful in that sense.
Yeah. And I'm going to ask you this because this has actually come up a lot and I've heard it thrown around, but you just nailed this. You're like, I've done everything that I've hired out. Right. And one of the big mistakes that I see a lot of entrepreneurs make is they hire out things they haven't done or that they don't have clarity on. And then they have an expectation that the other person can like see their vision. So how do you see it as like an importance of either having an awareness of the task or being in the task or have done the task when it comes to like outsourcing or being able to paint that picture? Do you think that's important?
I do. I mean, there's definitely some things that like you're not going to learn how to video edit if you're not into it. You know what I mean? But like, I think there's a level of curiosity to have around a task that you want to outsource just so that you're aware of like the process a little bit more rather than like having unrealistic expectations that like it just like that's a trigger word for us is just whenever people say it's just an email, it's just a newsletter, it's like it's not just. If you were to really break down the SOPs of it is not just one thing. So I do think that as CEOs who are wanting to delegate, one, it's great if you've done it before because then it definitely you have a little bit more understanding and like forgiveness, I guess, in it taking X amount of time or whatever that might be, or however many steps. When you're delegating something that you've never done yourself, I think that it's important to, like I said, just have a little bit of curiosity of what it takes before you like go out and expect this, and that. Also, too, instead of you Googling it or trying it yourself, ask questions to the service provider that you're wanting to outsource to and just say, hey, I'm curious on like, what is the steps for this? Not that I'll ever do it, but like, just curious so I know kind of what your workload is like, right? So I think people don't take the time to like actually understand it and they just assume based on what they see on the surface level and like at the end deliverable. And I don't think that's right either. I think naturally we do that for sure, but I do think like if you can pull it back and be like, actually, let me ask you, like, why does this take an hour versus what in my head was 20 minutes? So I think getting an understanding of that is very important so that you can be a little bit realistic of your expectations, so that you guys can have a good relationship with that person.
Yeah. And one of the things that you said too a minute ago, and I think is really, really important, even when you were talking about like giving feedback and communication, you've said this quite a few times already. You're like, I always tell them why. I always tell them why. And I feel like that's missed a ton and it ends up in this transactional, not having a human bucket where you start to feel bad and wrong. And so in how you're communicating, with your team, and I'm assuming with even with your clients,
Yeah.
do you always focus on like really communicating? Because you said that earlier is like one of those soft skills that's needed. But like, have you found that like always sharing why empowers the team or the person to not take it personal and
Oh
be able
yeah.
to adjust?
Yeah. It just leaves the unknown out of it.
Yeah.
Like if you don't want someone to come up with a certain perception. I don't know if that's the right word.
Yeah.
Perception.
Perception.
Yeah, like if you don't want someone to be like, "Ooh, I wonder if like this is what she meant," or like this is what they're really doing, or whatever. Then just say it.
Yeah.
Just explain it. Then, I think that's really eliminated a lot of like back and forth and a lot of uncertainty. Is like just explaining the why. Not saying you have to give a whole novel,
Yeah. Yeah.
but like
Yeah.
give a little bit of like context as to why. And I think it's really helped eliminate that like unknown,
Hmm.
which allows for just everyone to just kind of keep moving on. So I
Yeah.
do think that's very important.
Okay, and this question's kind of been burning for me, so I'm gonna like hard gear change real quick
Okay.
because you are an agency,
Yeah.
right? And I've worked with many, I've coached many, many, many agencies. I know personally, myself included, that
Mhm.
when somebody hires an agency, there are a lot of mistakes that are made and like false expectations.
Yeah.
And what are some of the things that you've seen that set people up for failure when it comes to like hiring an agency and not really like understanding how to communicate or what to ask for or what to look for? Because you've worked with so many entrepreneurs,
Mhm.
like what would your advice be for somebody who's like looking for, like, you guys solve such a creative outlet of problems, from making media to people to doing social media to back end operational
Yeah.
builds like I've never seen before in my
Yeah.
life. I've
Yeah,
seen
yeah.
some of your ClickUp projects and I'm like, whoa,
It's beautiful art.
it is
It's
beautiful,
beautiful
beautiful
art.
art and definitely not my muscle.
Mhm.
But as you know, you help a lot of clients and you've helped a lot of people, but I know there's a lot of people that listen to this like, oh, I'm just going to go hire an agency or I'm going to go hire this team. Like, what do you think are really important things for them to keep at the forefront of their mind when it comes to like thoughts, questions to ask, and even expectations to have when
Mhm.
hiring an agency that you've helped navigate to like kind of set people up to win?
That's a good question. I think that again, just really communicating what problems you're looking to have solved is very important, and like the previous experiences you've had too is very
Mm-hmm.
important to like put out there. People have been burned by other service providers, whether that's an agency or not, and I think it's being transparent in that is very good. Not that I think that they should base their experience with you off of that, but I think it's good information to have, just so you have some context to why they might reply a certain way or why they might expect a certain way, and just like you're kind of like restructuring that for them, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's important to know. But I think being open to, like I said, different ways of doing things than what you were used to, because now that you're bringing in a whole agency or even just a contractor, like there's going to be different ways to do things that you might not have even known existed, that are actually more efficient and better. And just being open to that, I think, is very important. I think with agencies too, it's important to understand, like, you're kind of coming on, I don't want to say their turf, but you do have to adapt a little bit to the way that they do things, because they are kind of like mass doing it for many people. Yes, customizing it to a certain extent, but like there's a certain way that we do our processes that have allowed us to get the wins that we have, and in order to build the things that we have and do the things that we do. So I think, going back to what I was just saying, like being open to different ways of doing it, like there is going to be a certain way that some agencies like to do things, and you have to be okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like, fully just, if you are delegating whatever it might be, just really giving that to that person to like just take responsibility on is important, and just let
Mm-hmm.
them drive and just kind of like observe and like listen, and just do your part that you have to do there. um and I think every agency is different.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really big misconception, that every agency is the same. And so, back to kind of what I was saying earlier, of like just asking questions on how they do things and why they do certain things and what they don't do, I think is very important as
Mm-hmm.
well. Because I think some people come in with the expectation of like, well, this agency did it, why can't you guys?
Mm-hmm.
Or like, this agency did it this way, why don't you guys do it this way? And it's like, well, we're all different.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's also very important, is just knowing that even though everyone has the label agency, doesn't mean that it's the same kind of way of doing things.
Yeah.
So I'd say that is the biggest one. And then I think it's an adjustment. That's probably been the biggest thing, is that it's a big adjustment working with multiple people versus one.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are used to hiring like a freelancer or a contractor that's one individual. When you hire our agency, you get about like 3 to 5 people on your profile, which some will like, some will not, and that's okay. But you have to think of you're kind of getting like 5 for 1
Yep.
in a way, right? Because everyone at the team has a different skill set. And so depending on the problem or problems that we're solving, we're going to need different experts to come in. And so that has probably been the biggest adjustment for a lot of people, is just like, oh, I don't know if I like all these people in here, but it's like we're solving so many different problems and we're all experts at different buckets. So it allows us to all kind of like collaboratively solve that problem in whatever way we need to. So I would say like, it's not really like a lesson. It's more just like a heads up. Like if you're going to work with an agency that's structured like ours, you do work with multiple people, but we keep things pretty like organized and concise so that you don't feel confused with like who to talk to.
Yep.
But it is something that is an adjustment.
Yeah, because one of the things that I see a lot, because I coach a lot of clients, is they'll have like mismatched expectations,
Yeah.
and especially unspoken ones.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get so stuck in the trap of like normally having like a freelancer or a team that they almost break boundaries and containers of like
Yeah.
this immediate gratification.
Yeah.
And then they try to project that out. And then they end up resenting the agency, when the agency itself, and I know yours very personally,
Mm-hmm.
is actually the most supportive structure, because it
Yeah.
almost forces planning and timeline and inputs. And it's something that I've seen, because I think a lot of agencies get a bad rap.
Yeah.
And I know
We do.
incredible people that
Yeah.
run incredible agencies,
Yeah.
but they're never even given the time of day.
Mm-hmm.
Just like kind of in my world, I feel like I'm the Robin Hood of marketing, where they've been screwed over by so many marketing coaches or mindset coaches. And they're like, George, help me, but everybody screwed me. And I don't know how I feel about you. And so I think it's really important, for everybody listening to this, even if you're thinking about hiring one or working with one, but also like, to your point, communicating like
Mm-hmm.
what your expectations are, asking a lot of
Yeah.
questions. And also, I know you're really good at filtering, because you won't take on a client that doesn't fit and how you guys operate and has the core
Mm-hmm.
values, but finding ones that are aligned with like how you see the world
Yeah.
and what you want to do in your business, so that you can be in your superpower and
Yeah.
be able to deliver that.
Well, and I do think that agencies are they'll come into your pipeline probably at some point in your journey, because I do think that there's this big, like kind of the next milestone that people hit when they leave us as a client, because, eventually some of them do,
Mm-hmm.
is they want someone in-house.
Yep.
So I think that's a whole other topic of conversation, is like in-house versus like outsourcing, like I guess third party is what you could say. But I think that agencies are a good stepping stone when you are trying to build your own internal team.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's another thing to consider too. And like a big one to consider when it comes to agencies versus freelancers is you could have 8 different contractors, right? Like, and they all have their own way of doing things, their own way of communicating. Like, imagine having to coordinate 8 different ways of doing things
Mm-hmm.
yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is just so much. So, like, when you come to an agency, we all already are working on the same kind of way of doing things. We all
Mm-hmm.
communicate already. We're all used to one another, So that collaboration is a lot easier for us as an agency, because we already work together every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Where when you're coordinating you to 8 other people who have different ways of doing things, that's so much more overwhelming.
Yep.
And it causes a lot of disconnect when you're trying to connect all the pieces together in this puzzle. So I think that's another thing to consider with agencies, is that you might think it's better to have this person, and this person, when you could just have one big team that already works cohesively together. And like cost wise too.
Mm-hmm.
Most freelancers, contractors are costing, X, Y, and Z. And that's only for that one person.
Mm-hmm.
Where when you do an agency, like I said, it's kind of like a 5 for 1.
Yeah.
So I think those are some things to consider too when you're thinking like agency or freelancer. But yeah, and like I said, it's okay if like an agency's not for you too.
Yep.
I think that's a big thing to say out loud as well, is that not an agency is not for everybody.
1,000%.
Mhm.
Yeah. And to your point too, like there's so many ways to build a team or
Yeah.
to build and scale your business, but
Yeah.
it's really finding what's going to give you the most leverage
Yeah.
to be able to do more of your superpower or bring more of your gift to the world. And
Mhm.
if you happen to have 4 things that you need and you can manage those 4, potentially, call Gabs or find
Yeah.
another agency that can help. It's a really, really important superpower
Yeah.
to be able to bring in. And this is a complete random question. I don't know why it popped into my brain. What is your absolute like favorite thing to solve for like clients? Like what's the one that like when you get them, like what are the best ahas?
Operations.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. When people say like, I have no systems in place, I have no way to track this, I have no idea where this is, my team can't operate together because they're all over the place and like our text messages and stuff, like that's like probably the scariest mess for a lot of people, but it's one of my favorite messes to fix.
Yeah. Is that probably one of the most common ones, is that it's basically like this, I'm going to do and fight these fires every day, but there's no consistency.
Yeah.
There's no central communication.
Yeah. Well, and I think like in the beginning, when you were by yourself, you operate off your iPhone notes or a hard copy of paper, or you're texting your one team member or whatever, right? So you're like, this works for me. And then you start scaling quickly. And then you're like, okay, well, let's just add more people to the group chat. Like you don't you don't give yourself enough time when you scale quickly, especially, or when it happens unexpectedly, to have those systems in place. And one of the things that I always said is like, I wish I put this in place when I was by myself, because
Mm,
it's harder to implement these things when you have more people, because you have more opinions, you have more resistance. So I wish that I had built these systems that I have right from the beginning, rather than when I had like 2, 3 people, because it's just a little bit more complicated that way. Because I think that even just like as a solo person too, it's like to keep your mind just like clean and at ease with managing all the other things that we do as humans,
mhm.
like just have a central place that's just work related. Because I think that's another thing, is like the boundaries of text messaging when it's like work versus personal, and then like that kind of gets blurry too. Or like iPhone notes, like and like physical paper, like if you were to delegate and you all physical paper, how are you going to get that to the other person, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, that's definitely one of the biggest things that people wait to do last, because they're like, well, it works right now how we're doing it, so why can't I keep going? And then they hit a breaking point where it's like, it is not working, help me now, because I don't know what to do. So I am definitely biased of saying, like, I think operations is one of the first things you should do, because it's kind of like the foundation to your house.
Yep.
But I don't think people see the importance of it until it's like, okay, now we have a problem.
Well, and one of the things that Kate says, and we've said for years, like if you can't measure it, you can't scale it. But that's also you being able to see objectively where you spend your time and how you
Mm-hmm.
spend your time. And
Mm-hmm.
and even as a solopreneur,
Yeah.
because we have a lot of people that listen to the show, they're in like that 5, 6 figure
Yeah.
bucket working on scaling. You're really running like sometimes 7, 8
Yeah.
races at the same time. You're doing your social, you're doing client delivery,
Yeah.
you're making your programs, you're building out your Kajabi. What's kind of like the bare minimum way? Like you just said this, and this I've never talked about this, but it's such a valid point,
Yeah.
because one of the famous quotes that I repeat all the time with my friend Alex Sharfin is, you don't have the business you want because you haven't become the person to run it.
Mm-hmm.
But to your point, if you operate now like you're going to hire somebody and you create that structure,
Yeah.
it makes that evolution so
Way
much
easier.
easier.
Mm-hmm.
So like what would be like kind of the bare minimum or foundational things where you as a solopreneur would go and create processes around, or like how would you go about doing that for a lot of the people listening? Because like by the way, I am the king of sticky notes. Like
I know I'm saying all these things, and I'm pretty sure you do a lot of
I do.
them.
And one of the craziest things is the biggest benefits is that I'm a backpack princess now and I don't have my office,
Mm-hmm.
because when I had my office, my desk was just littered with sticky
Sticky
notes. But
notes.
now I'm like borrowing my friend's studio and setting up outside. So I actually made a process of like, I'll write my fleeting notes
Yeah.
on like a sticky note, but before I'm done for the day, I go organize them in my ClickUp, or
Yeah.
I Slack them to myself, or I move them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But like, what do you think are some of like the most important, basic, kind of simple processes or ways for people to operationally manage
Mm-hmm.
as a solopreneur to kind of set them up for that first hire?
I think at least honestly document what you do every day.
Mm-hmm.
Like whether that's sending an email, whether that's like how you take meetings, whatever it is, like something as simple as that, I think is very important, to either record yourself in a Zoom video with a screen share, or like literally set up a camera and record how you do it, if that's what you have to do, if it's like a physical like way of doing things, like I think that's one thing that when I had to outsource, it was like, okay, so how do you do this? And I'm like, well, I just do it every day. So I'm not really sure. So it's like, honestly, like if you have you can make that space for yourself to just document how you even do things yourself. You don't have to put a title to it, but just literally just document it. I think is very important to do, because yeah, that minute that you feel drowned and it's time to give it to someone, if you can't show them how to do it, well, how are they supposed to help you?
Mm-hmm.
And then you get frustrated with that person because like, you're not doing it the way that I did it. Well, did you really show them how to do it? Or
Mm-hmm.
did you just expect them to like read your mind,
Mm-hmm.
or like you don't like the way they do it, right? So I do think that's number one, is like documenting how you do even just the littlest things, even like sending an invoice or like saving a receipt, like literally the smallest things, whatever you can think of. Or if there's like a specific way you like to edit or something, and anything,
Yep.
right? So I think that's number one. I do think that like your workload is very important. I think it's easy to be like, yes, yes, yes to all these clients and all these projects, but I think it's important to have a snapshot view of like, what is your actual client workload? Not just the workload wise, but also if you're wanting to see like where your revenue is at, like just understanding like who's the client, what do you do for them, how much are they paying you? Even just those 3 data
Mm-hmm.
points alone is like good, just so that you kind of like lose sight of it if you aren't documenting it. And then all of a sudden you're like, why am I down $5,000 a month? And it's like, well, because you lost so and so and you didn't even know that it was coming. Because that's
Mm-hmm.
another thing, is like start date, end dates. Like that's really important to know too, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know a lot of people, I'm like, so do you track your clients? They're like, yeah, through my invoices. I'm like, right, that's just your invoices. But do you actually know when their start date is or end date is, so that should they give you notice like, hey, I'm leaving, can you really forecast that, So I think that is like a really important, like if I had to choose just a few things, it would be your client management / workload, and how you do a few things like step by step.
Yeah, I actually think that that last point is huge as
Mm-hmm.
something that I've navigated and experienced and never really pre-solved until a couple of months ago,
Yeah.
because I was just in the game of being the hot cheerleader in school that everybody wanted. I'm like, oh
Mm-hmm.
wait, you're done. Oh, everybody's
Yeah.
done, right?
And
And
sometimes they all finish at the same time and you're like, oh shit.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because there's downstream implications,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you have a team and
Mm-hmm.
you have cash flow and you're
Yeah.
working through those things. So I actually love that. Like I wish I got that advice 15 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
because even for me, I remember even when I hired and Ashley became my CEO, she's like, how do you do this? I'm like, oh, and I had to
Yeah.
spend so much time
Yeah.
and like wasted months of
Mm-hmm.
like, if I had just documented this. And I think another hidden byproduct of it as well is that when you document it, one of the things I've noticed, it also forces me to look at my own process and
Mm-hmm.
realize where I'm doing things the old way or
Yeah.
inefficiently, where I can make them better now
Yeah.
to get to the same outcome. So I think there's so much credibility and power in what you just said about like documenting.
Yeah.
And so now I'm going to shift gears again, because this is the part, and I alluded to this earlier, right? We have Gabs, who runs the agency.
Yes.
We have Gabs, the personal brand,
Yes.
which I don't even know how to encompass this besides like all things life, fashion, food, snacks, Costco hauls,
Yeah.
you name it, it's there. We
Yeah.
have Gabs, the entrepreneur, who is like, I might do a physical product, I might do this. We have Gabs, who does brand deals.
Mm-hmm.
In all those buckets, like you run the agency, you manage the team, you have your personal brand.
Yeah.
Kate and I are putting pressure on you to show up consistently on your Instagram
Mm-hmm.
stories with your
Mm-hmm.
business brand. How do you navigate and structure your days, or like how do you go about that? Because on the outside it can feel like so much to manage,
Yeah.
but you kind of run multiple companies. So like,
Yeah.
what do you focus on to be able to operate in that bucket? Because I think there's a lot of people that have these side hobbies or these passions and they're like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
But or they end up doing it at the sacrifice of their current business. So like, how do you see that?
Honestly, I always joke how like my influencer side of me is like my 5 to 9. I always joke about that, but like truly that's kind of what it feels like right now. And I mean, that's just because like I also have to prioritize,
Yeah.
like there's definitely a lot more at stake with the agency. Like obviously, like I said, we're a team of 8. And that's a big focus of mine. And so I do have to compartmentalize my time a little bit and prioritize it a bit. Not saying that one gets sacrificed over the other, but I think it's just time management is huge. I mean, I'm still navigating that for sure, but like time management is huge. But I also try to find ways that I can like overlap the two,
Mm-hmm.
because at the end of the day, my personal brand, and I love that like social media has kind of like shifted this way, is that like your personal brand is like everything about you. It doesn't have to just be about fitness anymore. It doesn't have to be just about lifestyle. It doesn't have to be just about business. Like people want to know everything about you as a person. So I do love that like I'm able to kind of like integrate that a little bit more. But in managing all the businesses, honestly, it just is, yeah, time management at the end of the day, and just understanding how it's all important to me and making time for each of those things, because I get to fulfill so many different desires on both sides. I always say like the two sides of me, but I get to fulfill so many different desires on both sides, and they're both equally as fulfilling. And so just like recognizing that, I think, is really big, so that I know how to compartmentalize that.
Yeah.
And I think it's just so fun. I mean, being a multifaceted person, like it's just so fun that I get to be like a different version of me when I'm focusing on one or the other. But I'm slowly trying to find ways to like just have it not be so separated.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm still figuring it out, to be honest with you. But I think it's like when things are important to you, you're just gonna find a way. And if you really want it, you'll find a way.
Yeah, and I want to like, I got to acknowledge you for a minute too, because like you're like, oh, if it's important to you, you'll figure it out. I'm still figuring it out, but like I think one of your most powerful superpowers that I see is you allow iterations to happen and you
Mm-hmm.
like welcome them.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get stuck in this version of like, this is how we've always done it, or this is the way that I did it, or
Yeah.
I'm going to do it this way. And you also have this incredible ability to stay calm
Mm-hmm.
no matter what is happening around.
Yeah, I think just with life and all the things that I've gone through in my personal life, it's just like I could spend all this energy being upset, being frustrated, and don't get me wrong, I have those days
Of
for sure.
course.
But like most days, it's like, should I spend 20 minutes like stewing on that, or should I just keep moving on and just pivot,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just how I've approached life, I've approached business, I've approached my personal brand, is just like, there's only so much that's in your control,
Mm-hmm.
and you just kind of, yeah, you make the choice to either just like waste the time in that, or you like take it in for like 5 minutes and then you just keep going, and it's just, it's hard to explain. It's definitely something that you have to go through with experience.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the biggest challenge in me, like telling my story of like how I've become who I am today versus who I was like in the beginning, is that it just truly has come through experience and just like being so aware of like what is really worth my energy and not.
Mm-hmm.
And like just seeing like the silver lining on everything too, because it happened, you know, like things happen, it has happened. So what are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's nothing else.
That could be like that one audio snippet could be the entire podcast of like the best life, business, entrepreneurial advice that like you could ever give.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna hit some rapid fire ones because I'm like really really curious. Like, what is like what is like the one piece or like the most important piece or powerful piece of like business advice or perspective life advice that you've ever gotten that's had the biggest impact on you?
Stop chasing the blueprint and the answers, because
Mm,
they're
mm,
always changing depending on so many different variables. And like the more you just chase that clear answer and that clear plan, you are just going to go into so many different spirals, because you'll always hit all these detours and
mm,
you're going to be like, what the heck, like I had this map and now this map is nothing to me. And so to your point, like I just welcome everything that comes my way, and instead of getting like so fixated and worked on it, I'm just like, okay, well, like let's walk this way, then let's go left, let's go right, let's go up, let's go down, like whatever. You got shoes on, just keep walking. You know what I mean? Like that's what it
it's
is.
so humbling, Gabby. Like you're just summarizing like 12 years of my struggle as like a human and an entrepreneur. You're like, no, it's like you just welcome it. Like throw the blueprints. Like you don't have full control, but you do have control of yourself and how you respond to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that has come with my own personal development. Honestly, like I didn't think like this all the time. I
Mm-hmm.
definitely was that person that I was just like, I'd always beat myself up because I'm like, I had this plan, had this answer, and then it just had to keep changing. But I think just like I said, like I owe a lot of who I am as a CEO today for my personal journey. And I think that's why I hold my personal brand so close to me. I even say fitness. Fitness is a huge part of my life. And without going through, especially on the body, like professional
Mm-hmm.
bodybuilding side, like bodybuilding in general taught me so much about myself and taught me so much about possibility, and taught me so much about like just stay focused on the end goal rather than how you're going to get there,
Mm-hmm.
because how you get there is going to change depending on how your weight fluctuates, how your sleep was, how your food was, and stuff like that. And I think, like I said, without my fitness journey, I don't think I'd be as wise I am today in my business. And so I always think about prep whenever I start to get in my head about certain ways. And I think it's the same thing for everyone. Like just think about, you know, any sort of things you've been through in your personal life to connect that as to why, you know, certain things are happening and stuff. But yeah, that's kind of where I've gotten all of my thoughts and
Yeah,
the way I
I
do
actually
things.
think like I think fitness journeys in general, whether
Yeah.
it's I'm working on getting abs or losing weight or
Yeah.
competing, and even when I was on Flex Lewis as a friend of mine and we did a podcast both
Mm-hmm.
ways,
Mm-hmm.
this came up a ton because there's also this delayed gratification of results that's
Yeah.
built into it to
Yeah.
where like and you know our mutual client Kate jokes about this all the time. Like you don't go to the gym on day one and get frustrated you don't have abs.
Yeah.
But if you take that same view and you apply it into business or
Everything.
entrepreneurship, it's like, well, what can I control? And what if I shift today will
Yeah.
give me the possibility of that outcome and then
Mm-hmm.
like falling in love with that process.
Yeah.
You're just so wise, Gabs.
Thanks.
And like it's also like really really funny because I picture you as this like wise woman in matching Crocs and bonnets now, and I just have this image of you because I love you to pieces and I've seen you in this, and I was like, you just spit straight wisdom and like
I'm also just like, maybe it's the Libra in me that I'm just so about just like balance, just balance always, you know? And I don't know. I don't, maybe it's a thing like getting older in your 20s. I'm not 30 yet. So I'm like older in my 20s. Um, that you're just, I feel like that Kylie Jenner meme from like years ago, like just realizing things, you know,
yeah.
you just, as you get older, you just realize like what is worth your time and energy and what's not. And that does apply for your personal and business life. And I think at the end of the day, you got to remember, like, just
Mm-hmm.
have fun, enjoy it. I think that's the most important thing in business, is just enjoying the journey. You said that, like, you know, and especially like in fitness, right? Like, you end up finding a way to enjoy it because, like, as we know, time goes by so much faster now these days for some reason. And it's just like, if you're not enjoying the ups and the downs, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know? And so I think that's a really important part of it all, too, is that, like, just find ways to enjoy the challenges, find ways to enjoy like the biggest setbacks, and like always just understand that like it happened for some reason that you might not know today, you might not know tomorrow, but you'll maybe find out a year from now, 2 years from now, you never know. But it's a part of your journey, it's a part of your story. And I think that's really important that you just embrace that like everyone has such a unique journey and story, and like it's these moments that are going to contribute to that. And so really just love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Like I just feel like I got taken to church, Gabs. Like even the last like 10 minutes of this, I'm like all the business advice, all the agency, all the team nailed. The last 10 minutes, I'm like, I'm going to go pray on this later. Like I just got schooled in a sermon. Like,
I mean, it helps when you're surrounded by some great people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I feel the same to be you. I'm honored that we're friends. I'm grateful that you allowed me in your home and to convert your entire loft into
I love it.
a
I'm like,
makeshift
wow, I've
podcast
never
studio.
podcasted in here, and now it's like, there's potential.
Oh yeah, guys, I ran around the house. I grabbed chairs. I'm like, we found 2 matching chairs. We'll set up lights. We'll set up cameras. We got laptops on the floor. And I was like, we got a podcast. Like this was great. The one thing I'd love to know is like, where is your favorite place for people to connect with you?
Instagram.
Yeah. What's your Instagram?
Gabrielle T. Tongol is my personal one. And then Assist Her Agency is the business side. Either way, you're talking to me on both ones. So.
Yeah. And I'll link it in the show notes for everybody, but can you spell your personal one?
Yeah. GABRIELLE and then another T ONGOL. And then Assist Her Agency is literally Assist Her. So ASSISTHER It's so funny. People are like, ass is. I'm like, no, it's assist.
Yeah, I love it. And guys, I personally love Gabs to pieces, and I follow her. And if you want the most eclectic mix and the embodied example of like how to build a personal brand, but like how to really embody like what you've shared today, like go check her out, go follow. I know personally, I have many clients, a few that come to mind that have worked with you, and you're an absolute savage at what you do. And if anybody ever calls me and they're like, I need an agency, I'm like, well, there's only one that I know of that I would like put my life on the line for, and it's you. And so if you guys are listening to this or watching this and like you have any questions or any of this thing tickled, like I promise you, reach out to Gabs.
Tickled. I love that one.
Yeah, it's my favorite word, right? This the tickle test. If it tickled and you're like, holy moly, like that landed, or I never thought about having an agency, or I want to know what this is like just connect with Gabs and reach out, because her team and everybody that I've met is literally, and like to give you kudos again, like a walking embodied example of everything that you said on this show. And I know you probably don't need to hear that, but it feels good. Like for somebody, I've been doing this for a long time, and even like meeting you when I met you and knowing you now, like it really like melts my heart. It makes me emotional because you embody everything that you said on this episode. And like I've met your brother, I've gotten to talk to your mom on FaceTime.
Grandma.
Yeah, grandma said my food wasn't edible as like a joke. Like I've gotten the whole Gabs family experience, and I was welcomed in with like open arms. And you've helped me raid your snack pantry, and we've talked about fitness and life. But like you're incredible, and it's like a gift and an honor to be your friend. And it's so insanely profound to see you operate in business and to know the clients that we've shared together, and then to even do this episode and hear how you answered all of this. Like you're a walking example of this, and it's like something that I will strive to be better at, and I think so many people could learn so much from. And so like you should be incredibly proud of yourself. Like it's genuinely an honor.
Thank you. Meeting you this year has been an honor of my own. So thank you. I don't even know if that's the right wording, honor of my own, but it's an honor. Period.
We'll just make up our own language, Gabs. Like
that's one thing that I love to do is make up my own words. Make up my own words.
I feel this. Like this is Gab's world. We're just all living in it, and I am so ready for you to be president. Pick a country. Choose mine, please.
But no, truly, thank you for having me. It was great conversations, and I loved everything that we talked about. I think it's something that to be spoken more about.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And thank you for being one of the good agencies. I'll just go out and say it. Thank you for being one of the good ones.
Thank you.
So for everybody listening, this has been another episode. And like I say, always, like there was so much profound wisdom shared in this at so many levels. On the tactical level, whether you're a solopreneur or have one team member, and documenting your processes and creating structure and predictability for yourself, to looking at hiring a team or hiring an agency, to how to even navigate a team. And I would even say taking the same core values and principles that Gabs applied to building the team and applying them to yourself and the people closest to you. There are so many actionable items that you can grab today and take action on. And to Gabs' point, and I think one of the most important ones that I heard today, is understanding that it's a process. It's not a one and done, and the best things take time. But when you really commit to them and you protect them and you hold yourself to those standards, you get to live in the results 90 days, 180 days in the future, which creates nothing but relief in your life. And so have fun. Don't take anything too seriously. Say thank you for the challenge. Thank you for the invitation, and stay committed to the things you control. And one of my favorite ones is, if you want to feel it, give yourself 5 minutes and go feel it. But then ask yourself, like, what am I going to do about this? Because no one's coming. And I think that it was just such a profound episode. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. So everybody, this has been another episode of The Mind of George Show. Welcome to our crazy slice of the internet. I will either see you in the next episode or you will hear me in your earballs. And if you have any questions, or I'll have Gabs back on too.
Earballs.
Yeah, earballs. It's a Marine thing. Yeah, it's a Marine thing, and I can't stop saying it. I surveyed everybody on the podcast, and I was like, what's the favorite part of the show that you want to bring back? They're like, dude, you got to start saying earballs again. We miss it. And so if there's anything you want me to ask Gabs or bring Gabs on for a second show, shoot me a DM on Instagram and be like, hey, I'd love to have her back. I want to know about this, or about the personal brand or brand deals or her journey as an entrepreneur. And I will gladly grab Gabs again to do another episode. And so most importantly, have a beautiful day. Remember that relationships beat algorithms, especially the one with yourself. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.